The city hummed with a restless energy, a symphony of car horns and distant sirens that Anna barely registered. Lost in the labyrinth of her own thoughts, she clutched her worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude. Its pages softened by countless readings, she was waiting for a friend outside a bustling coffee shop, a place usually overflowing with the aroma of freshly brewed beans and the murmur of conversations. Today, however, the air crackled with an undercurrent of something else, something unsettling. Anna worked as a librarian, a keeper of stories, not a participant in them. Her life was one of quiet routine, punctuated by the comforting weight of books and the gentle rhythm of shelving and sorting. Excitement, for Anna, came in the form of discovering a rare first edition or unearthing a hidden gem within the library's vast collection. Danger was a misplaced decimal point in a catalog entry. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, painting the street in hues of orange and purple. Anna shifted her weight, impatiently checking her phone. Her friend was late, as usual. Just as she decided to send a text, a black sedan screeched to a halt across the street, its tires protesting against the asphalt. The sudden noise ripped through the city's hum, silencing the nearby chatter. For a fleeting moment, Anna thought it was just another traffic incident, a minor inconvenience in the urban sprawl. Then, the rear door of the sedan swung open, and a figure emerged, dressed in a nondescript suit. The figure moved with a chilling efficiency, a predator stalking its prey. Anna's eyes widened, instinctively sensing that something terrible was about to unfold. The figure raised a gun, a glint of metal flashing in the dying sunlight. A deafening report shattered the air, followed by the sickening thud of a body hitting the pavement. People screamed, scattering like pigeons startled by a sudden noise. Anna froze, paralyzed by fear and disbelief. Her mind struggled to process what she had just witnessed. A man lay motionless on the sidewalk, a crimson stain blooming on his chest. The shooter calmly returned to the sedan, which sped away, disappearing into the chaotic flow of traffic. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, reality warping around her. The crowd surged forward, a chaotic mass of horrified faces. Someone called 911, their voice trembling with panic. Anna remained rooted to the spot, her heart pounding in her chest. The scene was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. A macabre tableau played out against the backdrop of the city's indifferent skyline. Police officers swarmed the area, cordoning off the crime scene with yellow tape. Detectives began questioning witnesses, their faces grim and determined. Anna watched them, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. She knew she should speak up, tell them what she had seen. But something held her back, a primal instinct screaming at her to stay silent. The police quickly apprehended a suspect, a young man who had been arguing with the victim moments before the shooting. The media descended, turning the tragedy into a sensational headline. The city buzzed with rumors and speculation, each more outlandish than the last. Anna watched the news reports, her unease growing with each passing hour. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that the police had the wrong man. She had seen the shooter, seen his face, his cold, calculating eyes, and she knew, deep down, that she was now in grave danger. She was an ordinary witness, caught in the crosshairs of a deadly game. The city's symphony had turned into a dirge, and Anna knew her life would never be the same. The news reports replayed the same footage over and over. The suspect, a young man with a troubled past, being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of confusion and anger. The talking heads on the screen debated his guilt, dissecting his motives, painting him as a hardened criminal. Anna watched, a growing sense of unease twisting in her gut. They had the wrong man. She replayed the scene in her mind, frame by frame. The black sedan, the figure emerging, the glint of the gun, the cold, detached expression on the shooter's face. It wasn't the face of the young man plastered across the television screens. It was older, harder, etched with a chilling indifference. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares plagued her, replaying the shooting in vivid detail, the sound of the gunshot echoing in her ears. She tossed and turned, haunted by the image of the victim, lying motionless on the sidewalk. Guilt gnawed at her. She knew the truth, but she was paralyzed by fear. The next morning, she went to work, her movements sluggish and mechanical. The library, usually a sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, every unfamiliar face a potential enemy. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, her senses on high alert that a detective visited the library. A stocky man with a weary face and a sharp gaze that he asked her routine questions about the shooting. Her answers vague and non-committal, she avoided eye contact. Her heart pounding in her chest, she wanted to tell him everything, to unburden herself of the terrible secret she was carrying. But the words caught in her throat, choked by fear. "Did you see anything unusual, Ms. Bell?" the detective asked, his voice gentle but persistent. "Anything at all that might help us with our investigation?" Anna hesitated, her mind racing. "No," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't see anything." The detective studied her for a moment. His eyes narrowed. He seemed to sense her hesitation, her inner turmoil. But he didn't press her. He simply nodded, thanked her for her time, and left as soon as he was gone. Anna felt a wave of regret wash over her. She had lied, obstructed justice, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made the right decision, the only decision that would keep her alive. That evening, she received a phone call. An unknown number flashed on the screen. She hesitated, her hand trembling. Should she answer it? Or should she let it go to voicemail? Curiosity, or perhaps a morbid fascination, got the better of her. She took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. "Hello?" she said, her voice barely audible. Silence. Then, a voice, cold and menacing, whispered in her ear. "You saw something you shouldn't have, Ms. Bell. And now you're going to pay the price." The line went dead. Anna dropped the phone, her body trembling. She knew then that she was no longer safe. She had seen the wrong man pull the trigger, and now, everyone wanted her dead. Her reluctance to get involved had just signed her death warrant. The quiet, predictable life she had cherished was over. She was now a pawn in a deadly game, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. The phone call had been a chilling prelude, a stark warning of the danger that awaited. Anna spent a sleepless night, every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside her window amplifying her fear. She knew she couldn't stay in her apartment. Not anymore. That it was too exposed, too vulnerable. Dawn arrived, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink, but offering little comfort. Anna packed a small bag, stuffing it with essentials. A change of clothes, some cash, her passport, and almost instinctively, her well-worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude. She left a note for her friend, a vague explanation about needing to get away for a while, knowing it wouldn't allay their concerns, but hoping it would buy her some time. As she stepped out of her apartment building, she felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being watched. She scanned the street, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. A delivery truck idled nearby, its driver engrossed in his phone. A woman walked her dog, its leash straining as it sniffed at a fire hydrant. Everything seemed normal, yet Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. She decided to take the subway, hoping to lose anyone who might be tailing her in the crowded tunnels. She navigated the bustling platform, her senses on high alert, constantly scanning the faces around her. Just as the train arrived, she spotted him. He was standing across the platform, partially obscured by a pillar, but there was no mistaking him. The same man she had seen at the coffee shop, the man who had pulled the trigger. His eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition in their cold depths. Panic surged through her. She knew she had to get away, and fast. She pushed her way onto the crowded train just as the doors began to close, narrowly avoiding being trapped as the train lurched forward. She risked a glance back at the platform. The man was still there, his gaze fixed on her, a predatory smile playing on his lips. The train rattled through the tunnels, each stop bringing her closer to safety, but also closer to the unknown. She got off at a random station, emerging onto a busy street filled with shops and restaurants. She tried to blend in with the crowd, weaving through the throngs of people, hoping to disappear. She ducked into a crowded market, the air thick with the smells of spices and fresh produce. She moved quickly, her eyes darting from side to side, searching for an escape route. As she rounded a corner, she bumped into someone, sending a pile of oranges tumbling to the ground. "Sorry?" she mumbled, quickly gathering the scattered fruit. As she straightened up, she saw him again. He was closer now, his expression grim, his hand reaching inside his jacket. Anna knew she was out of time. She had to act, and she had to act fast. She grabbed a nearby bag of potatoes, hefting it with surprising strength as the man drew his gun. She swung the bag with all her might. Hitting him squarely in the face, he staggered backward. Momentarily stunned, Anna seized the opportunity, shoving past him and sprinting through the market, knocking over stalls and scattering shoppers in her wake. She didn't stop running until she reached a busy intersection, her lungs burning, her legs aching. She had survived. But she knew this was just the beginning. The attempt on her life had made it clear. Someone powerful wanted her silenced, and they wouldn't stop until she was dead. She had to find a way to protect herself, to expose the truth. Before it was too late, her resourcefulness had bought her some time. But she needed help, someone who could fight back against the forces arrayed against her. She needed someone like Bishop. Bishop wasn't his real name, of course. Names were fluid, disposable things in his line of work. He preferred to be called Bishop, though it had a certain weight, a certain finality. He was a closer, a problem solver, and right now, the problem was Annabelle. He sat in a dimly lit bar, nursing a whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, reflecting the neon signs outside. The bar was a neutral ground, a place where shadows danced and secrets were traded. He'd been contacted by an old associate, a favor owed, a debt to be repaid. The details were sketchy, but the message was clear: protect the librarian. Bishop had retired from that life, or so he thought. He traded bullets for books, adrenaline for anonymity. He spent his days restoring classic cars in a quiet garage on the outskirts of the city, a far cry from the covert operations and dangerous missions that had defined his past. But the past had a way of catching up, of dragging you back into the darkness. He wasn't thrilled about the assignment. Babysitting a civilian wasn't exactly his forte. He preferred clean, efficient solutions, not messy entanglements. But he owed a debt, and a debt was a debt. He would protect Annabelle, but he would do it his way. He'd already done his research. Of course, he knew about the shooting, the wrong suspect, the threatening phone call. He knew about Anna's quiet life, her love of books, her aversion to conflict. She was a lamb being led to the slaughter, and he was the only one standing between her and the wolves. He finished his whiskey, the burn a familiar comfort. He stood up, his movements fluid and purposeful. He had a librarian to find, and a life to save. He found Anna at a rundown motel on the edge of town, hiding under an assumed name. He knocked on the door, the sound sharp and authoritative. "Ms. Bell?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Anna peeked through the peephole, her eyes wide with fear. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My name is Bishop," he said. "I'm here to help you." She hesitated for a moment, then slowly opened the door, a chain still fastened. "Who sent you?" she asked, her gaze wary. "That's not important," Bishop said. "What's important is that you're in danger, and I'm the only one who can protect you." He could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear that clouded her judgment. But he also saw a glimmer of hope, a desperate need for someone to trust. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked. Bishop sighed. He wasn't good at trust. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. "You don't," he said. "But you don't have any other choice." He waited, letting his words sink in. He knew he wasn't offering her much, but it was the best he could do. He was a protector, not a savior. He would keep her alive, but he wouldn't promise her a happy ending. Those were fairy tales, and he didn't believe in fairy tales. Finally, she unchained the door and opened it wider, her eyes fixed on his. "Okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll trust you." Bishop stepped inside, his senses on high alert. He could feel the danger lurking in the shadows, the unseen forces closing in. He had a long night ahead of him, and a very reluctant client to protect. He was back in the game, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The motel room was cramped and stale, the air thick with the scent of cheap disinfectant and desperation. Bishop surveyed their temporary sanctuary with a critical eye, checking the windows, the doors, the blind spots. He moved, with a practiced efficiency, a ghost in the shadows, while Anna watched him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "We can't stay here," Bishop said, his voice curt. "It's too exposed. They'll find us." "Where do we go?" Anna asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Somewhere they won't expect," Bishop replied, his gaze fixed on the street outside. "Somewhere safe." He didn't elaborate. Bishop wasn't one for explanations. He preferred action to words. He grabbed Anna's bag, slinging it over his shoulder. "Let's go," he said as they left the motel. Anna struggled to keep up with Bishop's long strides. He moved with a purpose, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. She felt like a lamb being led to slaughter, her trust in this enigmatic stranger her only lifeline. "Who are you, really?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Bishop stopped, turning to face her. "I told you," he said. "I'm here to protect you." "But who are you protecting me from?" Anna pressed. "And why?" Bishop hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He didn't like talking about his past. It was a dark and dangerous place. A place he preferred to keep buried. "Let's just say I used to work for people who make a living cleaning up messes," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Sometimes those messes get a little too big, a little too dirty. And sometimes innocent people get caught in the crossfire." He paused, his gaze hardening. "I got tired of cleaning up other people's messes," he said. "I wanted to do something different. Something cleaner." He didn't mention the missions gone wrong, the lives lost, the betrayals that had scarred him. He didn't mention the constant fear, the sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility that had driven him to the brink of despair. He simply offered a sanitized version of his past, a carefully constructed facade designed to keep Anna at arm's length as they drove. Anna couldn't help but study Bishop. He was a man of contradictions. Hard and ruthless, yet strangely protective. He was a killer, but he seemed to care about her safety. She didn't understand him, and she wasn't sure she ever would. "Where are we going?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Somewhere safe," Bishop repeated. "Somewhere I used to work." He drove to a secluded cabin in the mountains, a place he had used as a safe house during his operative days. It was isolated and secure, equipped with everything they needed to survive. As they settled in, the tension between them remained palpable. Anna was wary of Bishop's methods, his willingness to use violence. Bishop was frustrated by Anna's naivete, her reluctance to accept the brutal reality of their situation. "You need to understand, Anna," Bishop said, his voice patient but firm. "These people aren't playing games. They'll stop at nothing to silence you. You need to be prepared to fight back." "I'm not a fighter," Anna protested. "I'm a librarian." "Then you're going to have to learn," Bishop said, "because right now your life depends on it." Their alliance was uneasy, forged in fear and desperation. But they were bound together by a common enemy, a shared desire to survive. And as the days passed, they would learn to rely on each other, to trust each other, to fight together, even if it meant breaking all the rules. The cabin was a fortress, but it was also a prison. Anna felt trapped, isolated from the world, her life reduced to a series of survival drills and tense conversations with Bishop. He was a whirlwind of activity. Making calls on a secure line, poring over documents, his mind constantly racing, piecing together the puzzle of the shooting. While Anna felt confined, Bishop used the relative safety of their location to begin his own investigation. He couldn't rely on the police. They were either incompetent or, more likely, compromised. He needed to find out who had ordered the hit, and why. He started with the victim, a mid-level accountant named David Miller. On the surface, Miller seemed like an ordinary man, a family man with a mundane job. But Bishop knew that appearances could be deceiving. He dug deeper, scouring Miller's financial records, his phone logs, his online activity. He discovered that Miller had been transferring large sums of money to offshore accounts linked to a shadowy organization known only as the Syndicate. The Syndicate was a network of corrupt politicians, businessmen, and criminals, all working together to amass power and wealth. Bishop suspected that Miller had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, something that threatened the Syndicate's operations. He had likely been silenced to protect their secrets. He traced the black sedan used in the shooting to a rental company, but the trail quickly went cold. The car had been rented under a false name, using forged documents. The shooter was a professional, someone who knew how to cover their tracks. Bishop also looked into the young man who had been arrested for the crime, a petty thief with a history of violence, that he discovered that the young man had been paid a large sum of money to be at the coffee shop that day, to argue with Miller, to create a distraction, that he was a patsy, a scapegoat. The more Bishop dug, the deeper he got, the more dangerous the conspiracy became. He realized that the syndicate had tentacles reaching into every corner of the city, into the highest levels of power. He was up against a formidable enemy. An enemy that wouldn't hesitate to crush anyone who stood in their way. He shared his findings with Anna, explaining the complex web of corruption and deceit that he had uncovered. Anna listened intently, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't believe that such a dark and sinister world existed beneath the surface of her ordinary life. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're going to expose them," Bishop said, his voice hard. "We're going to bring them down." But he knew it wouldn't be easy. The syndicate had resources, connections, and a willingness to kill. They would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Bishop knew they were walking a dangerous path, a path that could lead to their deaths. But he was determined to see it through, to bring justice to David Miller, and to protect Anna from the forces that were trying to silence her. He had a plan, a risky plan that involved infiltrating the syndicate's inner circle, gathering evidence, and exposing their crimes to the world. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. The investigation had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. The hunter had become the hunted, and the battle for survival had just begun. The plan was simple in theory. Bishop needed to meet with a contact, a former colleague who could provide him with crucial information about the syndicate's operations. The meeting point was a secluded diner on the outskirts of the city, a place Bishop had used many times in the past. He knew it was a risk, leaving the relative safety of the cabin. But he couldn't gather the evidence he needed without taking chances. He briefed Anna on the plan, emphasizing the importance of staying out of sight, of not drawing attention to herself as they drove to the diner. Bishop's senses were on high alert. He scanned the rearview mirror, constantly checking for tails. He knew the syndicate wouldn't let them investigate without a fight. They arrived at the diner without incident. But Bishop felt a prickle of unease. The parking lot was deserted, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. He instructed Anna to stay in the car, to keep the engine running, and to be ready to drive at a moment's notice. He entered the diner, his hand resting on the Glock tucked into the waistband of his jeans. The diner was dimly lit, the only patrons a lone truck driver and a waitress wiping down the counter. Bishop spotted his contact sitting in a booth in the back, a burly man with a shaved head, and a haunted look in his eyes. As Bishop approached the booth, he noticed something out of place. A shadow moving in the reflection of the window. He reacted instantly, shoving his contact to the ground just as a volley of gunfire erupted, shattering the windows and sending shards of glass flying. "Get down!" Bishop yelled, drawing his weapon and returning fire. The diner erupted into chaos, the truck driver and the waitress scrambling for cover. Bishop exchanged fire with the attackers, two men dressed in black, their faces hidden behind masks. He recognized them as syndicate enforcers, ruthless killers with no regard for human life. He knew they couldn't stay in the diner. They were outnumbered and outgunned. He grabbed his contact and made a dash for the exit, bullets whizzing past their heads. They burst out of the diner, only to be met by a hail of gunfire. The syndicate enforcers had set up an ambush, blocking their escape route. Bishop shoved his contact into the car with Anna, yelling, "Drive! Get us out of here!" Anna, her hands trembling, slammed the car into gear and peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. The syndicate enforcers piled into their own cars and gave chase, their engines roaring. The chase was on. Bishop leaned out the window, firing at the pursuing vehicles, trying to disable them. Anna weaved through traffic, her eyes fixed on the road, her heart pounding in her chest. Bishop used all his driving skills to evade their pursuers, performing daring maneuvers, cutting through traffic, and narrowly avoiding collisions. He drove like a man possessed, his focus laser-sharp, his reflexes honed by years of experience. The chase led them through the city streets, onto the highway, and finally into a sprawling industrial park. Bishop knew they couldn't outrun the syndicate forever. He needed to find a way to turn the tables, to stop them before they reached a dead end. He spotted an abandoned warehouse, a sprawling structure with multiple entrances and exits. "Turn in there," he yelled to Anna. "I have a plan." Anna swerved the car into the warehouse parking lot, slamming on the brakes. Bishop jumped out, grabbing his weapons and signaling Anna to follow him. The chase had just entered a new phase, a deadly game of cat and mouse in a labyrinth of steel and concrete, and Bishop was determined to win. The abandoned warehouse offered a temporary reprieve, a chance to catch their breath and regroup. Bishop used his knowledge of the building to set up defenses, creating choke points and escape routes. He knew the syndicate wouldn't give up easily. They would be coming soon. He patched up his contact, who had sustained a minor gunshot, wound during the ambush. The contact, a grizzled veteran named Marcus, was grateful for Bishop's help, but his face was etched with worry. "They knew we were coming," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "Someone tipped them off." Bishop's gut clenched. He had suspected as much. The syndicate's reach was extensive, their intelligence network deep, but the thought of betrayal stung. He prided himself on his ability to read people, to assess their loyalty. He had clearly misjudged someone. He needed a safe place, a place where they could regroup and plan their next move. He thought of Sarah, a former colleague, a tech expert he had worked with on numerous missions. She had a secure safe house on the other side of the city, a place that was off the grid, undetectable. He contacted Sarah, explaining their situation, and she agreed to help. She gave him the address to the safe house, assuring him that it was completely secure. They left the warehouse under the cover of darkness, Bishop driving, Anna and Marcus huddled in the back. He took a circuitous route, avoiding main roads, constantly checking for tails. They arrived at the safe house without incident. It was a nondescript suburban home, indistinguishable from the other houses on the street. Sarah greeted them at the door, her face etched with concern. "I'm so glad you're safe," she said, ushering them inside. "I've got everything you need. Food, supplies, a secure communication line." The safe house was clean and well-equipped, a welcome change from the grimy warehouse. Anna felt a sense of relief, a glimmer of hope that they might actually survive this ordeal. But Bishop couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The house was too perfect, too clean, too sterile. He trusted Sarah, or at least he thought he did, but he couldn't ignore his instincts. He decided to test the security of the house. He asked Sarah to show him the alarm system, the hidden cameras, the emergency exits. She complied, but her explanation seemed rehearsed, her movements a little too smooth as she showed him the back door. Bishop noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A small red light blinking on a security panel at IT was a signal that the house was being monitored. He realized the truth with a sickening lurch. Sarah was the mole. She had betrayed them to the syndicate. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Who are you working for?" Sarah's face hardened, her eyes turning cold. "It's over, Bishop," she said. "The syndicate knows you're here. There's no escape." Suddenly, the house was surrounded. Syndicate enforcers burst through the doors and windows, weapons drawn. Bishop reacted instantly, shoving Anna and Marcus behind a sofa and drawing his weapon. The safe house had become a death trap, and they were caught in the middle. The betrayal had cut deep, but Bishop wouldn't let it break him. He would fight to the death to protect Anna, to expose the syndicate, and to avenge the trust that had been so brutally violated. The safe house turned into a war zone. Bishop, Anna, and Marcus fought back against the syndicate enforcers, using furniture as barricades, turning the ordinary suburban home into a deadly obstacle course. Bullets ripped through walls, shattering glass and tearing holes in the plaster. Marcus, despite his injury, proved to be a valuable asset, his years of experience as a soldier kicking in. He provided cover fire while Bishop moved Anna to a safer location, a small storage room at the back of the house. "Stay here," Bishop instructed, his voice urgent. "Don't come out until I tell you to." Anna, terrified but determined, nodded. She knew she was a liability in a firefight, but she also knew she couldn't just stand by and do nothing as Bishop and Marcus continued to battle the syndicate enforcers. Anna's mind raced. She replayed the events of the past few days, searching for a clue, a detail she might have overlooked. She thought back to the coffee shop, the shooting, the black sedan. Then, it hit her. A small detail, something she had almost dismissed as insignificant. The license plate. She hadn't consciously registered the entire number, but she remembered a sequence of letters and numbers, a unique combination that had stuck in her mind. She had always had a knack for remembering details, a skill she had honed during her years as a librarian. She could recall entire passages from books, remember faces and names from years ago. It was a gift, a skill she had always taken for granted. But now, it could be the key to unraveling the conspiracy. She grabbed a pen and a piece of paper, frantically trying to recall the exact sequence of letters and numbers. She closed her eyes, focusing her mind, visualizing the black sedan, the license plate, the fleeting glimpse she had caught. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to write down the sequence, piecing together the puzzle, filling in the gaps in her memory. Meanwhile, the battle raged on outside. Bishop and Marcus were holding their own, but the syndicate enforcers were relentless. They were slowly but surely gaining ground, pushing closer to the storage room. Anna knew she had to hurry. She had to get the license plate number to Bishop, to give him something to work with, something that could turn the tide of the battle. Finally, she had it. The complete license plate number, etched in her memory, now transferred to the piece of paper. She cautiously opened the door of the storage room, peering out into the chaos. She spotted Bishop, locked in a fierce hand-to-hand combat with one of the syndicate enforcers. She knew she had to act quickly. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the storage room, holding the piece of paper aloft. "Bishop!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the gunfire. "I remember the license plate number." Bishop glanced at her, his eyes widening with surprise. He quickly dispatched his opponent and rushed towards her. Grabbing the piece of paper, he scanned the number. His mind racing, he recognized the code. A unique identifier used by a shell corporation controlled by the syndicate. He knew then that they were one step closer to exposing the truth, to bringing down the organization that had turned their lives upside down. Anna's unique skill, her ability to remember details, had given them a fighting chance. The librarian had become a warrior, and the battle for survival had just taken a new turn. The license plate was their ticket, a thread they could pull to unravel the syndicate's carefully constructed web. Bishop knew the shell corporation was just a front, a way to launder money and conceal their illegal activities. He needed to find out who was behind it, who was pulling the strings. He tracked the corporation to a small office building in the financial district, a place that reeked of money and corruption. That he knew he couldn't just walk in and start asking questions. He needed a more persuasive approach. He identified a mid-level executive, a man named Richard Harding, who was known to be involved in the corporation's day-to-day operations. Harding was a weak link, a man driven by greed and ambition. Bishop figured he could be broken. He waited for Harding outside his office building, ambushing him as he walked to his car. He forced Harding into the back of a van, driving him to a secluded location on the outskirts of the city, a place where no one would hear their screams. Anna watched from a distance, her stomach churning. She had never witnessed anything like this before. She had always believed in justice, in due process, in the rule of law. But Bishop was operating outside the law, using methods that were brutal and unforgiving. Bishop interrogated Harding, demanding to know who was behind the shell corporation, who had ordered the shooting, who was trying to silence Anna. Harding initially refused to talk, his arrogance and sense of entitlement blinding him to the danger he was in. But Bishop was relentless. He used a combination of threats, intimidation, and physical force to break Harding's will. He showed him photos of his family, reminding him of what he stood to lose. He recounted Harding's past transgressions, exposing his darkest secrets. As Harding's resistance crumbled, Bishop's methods became increasingly brutal. He used his knowledge of pressure points, of pain infliction, to extract the information he needed. Anna watched in horror, her moral compass spinning out of control. She knew that Harding was a bad person, that he deserved to be punished for his crimes. But she couldn't condone Bishop's methods, his willingness to inflict pain and suffering. She questioned whether the ends justified the means, whether it was right to fight evil with evil. Finally, Harding cracked. He revealed the names of the key players in the syndicate, the politicians, businessmen, and criminals who were running the organization. He identified the man who had ordered the shooting, a powerful figure with connections to the highest levels of government. Bishop had gotten what he wanted. He had extracted the vital information he needed to expose the syndicate. But at what cost? He left Harding battered and broken, a shell of his former self. As they drove away, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line, that they had become the very thing they were fighting against. Was that necessary? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Bishop glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Sometimes, he said, the only way to fight monsters is to become one yourself. Anna didn't respond. She didn't know if she could accept that, if she could live with the choices they were making. The moral dilemma weighed heavily on her, threatening to tear her apart. The line between right and wrong had become blurred, and Anna wasn't sure which side she was on anymore. The information extracted from Harding painted a target on their backs even bigger than before. The syndicate knew they were closing in, and they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate any loose ends. Bishop knew they had to move fast, to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. He decided to use the element of surprise. He planned to leak the information they had gathered to a trusted journalist, a woman named Maria Sanchez, who had a reputation for exposing corruption. But getting to Maria wouldn't be easy. The syndicate would be watching their every move. He decided to use a different mode of transportation, something less conspicuous than a car. He knew a guy who ran a boat rental business down by the harbor, a place where he could acquire a fast, powerful speedboat. They drove to the harbor under the cover of darkness, the city lights shimmering on the water. Bishop acquired the speedboat, a sleek, black vessel with a powerful engine. He briefed Anna on the plan, emphasizing the importance of staying low, of not drawing attention to themselves. As they sped away from the harbor, heading towards the open sea, they spotted them. Syndicate enforcers, pursuing them in two high-speed boats, their engines roaring, their intentions clear. The chase was on. Bishop maneuvered the speedboat through the choppy waters, dodging waves and avoiding obstacles. The syndicate enforcers opened fire, bullets ricocheting off the hull of the boat. Anna, clinging to the railing, felt the spray of the ocean on her face, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had never been on a speedboat before, let alone been involved in a high-speed chase on the open sea. Bishop weaved through the waves, using his knowledge of the coastline to his advantage. He navigated through narrow channels, around rocky outcrops, trying to shake off their pursuers. The syndicate enforcers were relentless. They closed the distance, their boats gaining on them. Bishop knew he had to do something drastic. He spotted a cluster of small islands in the distance, a maze of rocks and reefs. He decided to use them as cover, to try and lose their pursuers in the treacherous waters. He steered the speedboat towards the islands, navigating through the narrow channels with skill and precision. The syndicate enforcers followed, their boats struggling to keep up. As they entered the maze of islands, Bishop executed a daring maneuver, cutting through a narrow channel, barely avoiding a collision with a rocky outcrop. The syndicate enforcers, unable to react in time, crashed their boats into the rocks, their pursuit coming to a sudden and violent end. Bishop had outmaneuvered them, but he knew it was only a temporary victory. The syndicate would be back, and they would be more determined than ever. He continued to speed towards their destination, the boats slicing through the water, the wind whipping through their hair. The stakes had been raised, the danger had intensified, but Bishop was determined to reach Maria Sanchez, to expose the syndicate's crimes to the world. He wouldn't let anything stop him, not even the threat of death. The high-octane chase had proven one thing: the only way out was through. They finally reached Maria Sanchez, a seasoned journalist with a steely gaze and an unwavering commitment to the truth. Bishop laid out the evidence, the names, the dates, the connections. Maria listened intently, her expression grim. She knew the risks involved in exposing the syndicate, but she also knew it was the right thing to do. As Maria reviewed the documents, she stumbled upon something that made her pause at a name, a company, a transaction that seemed out of place. She looked up at Bishop, her eyes filled with concern. "This is bigger than you think," she said, her voice low. "The shooting wasn't just about silencing Miller. It was about something much more valuable." She explained that David Miller, the accountant who had been killed, had stumbled upon evidence of a massive embezzlement scheme, a plan to steal billions of dollars from a government infrastructure project. The money was being funneled into offshore accounts, controlled by the syndicate. But the real shocker was the reason for the embezzlement. The money wasn't just for personal gain. It was being used to fund a political coup, a plan to overthrow the government and install a puppet regime controlled by the syndicate. The shooting was just the tip of the iceberg, a small piece of a much larger, more sinister puzzle. The syndicate wasn't just a criminal organization. It was a threat to democracy itself. As Maria continued to dig, she discovered something even more disturbing. A personal connection between Bishop and the syndicate, she found. A file, a classified document that mentioned Bishop's past, his involvement in a covert operation gone wrong. The operation had been sanctioned by a rogue faction within the government, a group that was now aligned with the syndicate. The operation had resulted in the death of several innocent civilians, including Bishop's wife. Bishop had always believed that his wife's death was an accident, a tragic consequence of the mission. But Maria's research revealed that it was no accident. His wife had been deliberately targeted, a sacrifice made to silence Bishop, to prevent him from exposing the truth. The revelation hit Bishop like a punch to the gut. He had been living a lie for years, haunted by a past he didn't fully understand. The syndicate had taken everything from him, and now, they were trying to take everything from Anna. He felt a surge of anger, a burning desire for revenge. He wouldn't let the syndicate win. He would expose their crimes, avenge his wife's death, and protect Anna from the forces that were trying to destroy her. The stakes had been raised. The battle had become personal. Bishop wasn't just fighting to protect Anna. He was fighting to reclaim his past, to find closure, to seek justice for the woman he had loved. The revelation had given him a new sense of purpose, a renewed determination to bring the syndicate down, no matter the cost. Maria, knowing the gravity of the situation, immediately went into hiding to prepare the story for publication. Bishop and Anna, however, knew they couldn't simply wait for the story to break. The syndicate would likely try to suppress it, and they would certainly come after them with renewed force. They needed a plan, a way to strike back at the syndicate, to expose their crimes to the world before it was too late. They retreated to a safe location, a remote warehouse on the docks, a place that Bishop had used as a staging ground in the past. The odds were stacked against them. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by enemies, but they had one thing on their side: their determination. They wouldn't give up, they wouldn't back down. They would fight to the bitter end. Bishop began to prepare for their final stand, gathering weapons, setting up defenses, and formulating a strategy. He knew they couldn't win a head-on confrontation. They needed to use their skills, their resources, and their ingenuity to turn the tables on the syndicate. He tapped into his network of contacts, calling in favors, gathering intelligence, and acquiring supplies. He transformed the warehouse into a fortress, a place where they could withstand a siege, a place where they could launch a counterattack. Anna, inspired by Bishop's resolve, stepped up to the challenge. She used her research skills to gather information on the syndicate's operations, their finances, their personnel. She identified their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, their pressure points. She discovered that the syndicate's leader, a ruthless businessman named Victor Sterling, was planning to attend a gala event at a luxury hotel in the city. The event was a fundraiser for a political campaign, a campaign that was secretly being funded by the syndicate. Anna realized that this was their opportunity, a chance to strike at the heart of the syndicate, to expose their crimes to the world. She proposed a daring plan: infiltrate the gala, gather evidence of Sterling's involvement in the coup, and leak it to the media. It was a long shot, a risky plan that could easily backfire. But it was their only chance. Bishop, impressed by Anna's courage and ingenuity, agreed to the plan. They spent the next few hours preparing for the mission, utilizing their combined skills and resources. Bishop trained Anna in combat tactics, teaching her how to defend herself, how to use a weapon, how to survive in a hostile environment. Anna, in turn, used her knowledge of computers and networks to create a diversion, a cyber attack that would disrupt the syndicate's communications and security systems. They knew they were facing overwhelming odds, but they were determined to succeed. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to give up now. They were ready for their final stand, ready to fight for justice, ready to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Dressed in elegant attire, Bishop and Anna infiltrated the gala. The hotel ballroom glittered with wealth and power, the air thick with the scent of perfume and expensive champagne. Victor Sterling, the epitome of ruthless ambition, held court at the center of the room, surrounded by his cronies. Anna, using her hacking skills, disabled the hotel's security cameras and communication systems, creating a window of opportunity for Bishop to move undetected. She navigated the crowded ballroom, gathering evidence of Sterling's illegal activities, downloading financial records, recording conversations. Bishop, meanwhile, made his way towards Sterling, his gaze fixed on his target. He knew this was his chance to end it all, to avenge his wife's death, to bring the syndicate down once and for all. As he approached Sterling, he was intercepted by a group of syndicate enforcers, their faces grim, their intentions clear. A firefight erupted, shattering the elegance of the gala, turning the ballroom into a battleground. Bishop fought with a ferocity born of years of experience and a burning desire for revenge. He moved with speed and precision, taking down the enforcers with brutal efficiency. Anna, despite her lack of combat experience, held her own, using her quick thinking and resourcefulness to evade the enforcers, to protect herself, to continue gathering evidence as the battle raged. Sterling attempted to escape, making his way towards a private elevator. Bishop pursued him, determined to stop him from getting away. He caught up with Sterling. Just as the elevator doors were closing, he forced them open, confronting Sterling face to face. "It's over, Sterling," Bishop said, his voice cold. "Your reign of terror is at an end." Sterling, his face contorted with rage, drew a gun and fired. Bishop dodged the bullet, disarming Sterling and engaging him in a hand-to-hand combat. The two men fought with a desperate intensity, their skills and strength evenly matched. The battle spilled out of the elevator, into a penthouse suite overlooking the city. As they fought, Anna arrived, carrying a flash drive containing the evidence she had gathered. She knew she had to get the evidence to the authorities, to expose Sterling's crimes, to the world, but Sterling intercepted her, knocking her to the ground and grabbing the flash drive. He was about to destroy it when Bishop intervened, tackling Sterling and sending him crashing through a window. Sterling plummeted to his death, his reign of terror finally at an end. Bishop, exhausted but victorious, turned to Anna, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. Anna nodded, her body bruised but her spirit unbroken. They had won, but at a cost. They had sacrificed their peace of mind, their sense of normalcy, to fight for justice. They knew their lives would never be the same. They were forever changed by the events of the past few days. But they had done the right thing. They had exposed the syndicate. They had brought down a corrupt empire. The personal sacrifices had been great, but the victory was worth it. The aftermath of the gala was a whirlwind of media attention, police investigations, and political fallout. Maria Sanchez published her story, exposing the syndicate's crimes to the world. The evidence Anna had gathered was irrefutable, the conspiracy laid bare for all to see. The government launched a massive investigation, arresting dozens of politicians, businessmen, and criminals who were involved in the syndicate. The planned coup was thwarted, democracy was preserved, and justice, of some kind, was served. Anna's life was forever changed. She was no longer an ordinary librarian living a quiet life. She was a hero, a symbol of courage and resilience. She received accolades from all over the world, invitations to speak at conferences, offers to write a book. But Anna didn't want any of that. She just wanted to go back to her old life, to the comforting weight of books, to the gentle rhythm of the library. But she knew that was impossible. She could never forget what she had seen, what she had done. She decided to use her newfound platform to advocate for justice, to fight against corruption, to give a voice to the voiceless. She became an activist, a champion of the underdog, a force for good in the world. Bishop, true to his nature, disappeared back into the shadows. He had done what he had set out to do. Protect Anna, avenge his wife's death, and bring down the syndicate. He didn't want any recognition, any praise. He just wanted to be left alone. He left Anna a note, a simple message scrawled on a piece of paper. "Take care, Anna, you're stronger than you think." Anna never saw Bishop again. She knew he was out there, somewhere, fighting his own battles, protecting the innocent, righting the wrongs. She would always be grateful to him, for saving her life, for showing her the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the world. She returned to the library, but it wasn't the same. The quiet routine, the comforting weight of books, seemed dull and meaningless after everything she had been through. She decided to create a new chapter, a new purpose for her life. She transformed the library into a community center, a place where people could come together, learn, and connect. She organized Workshops on civic engagement, on media literacy, on fighting corruption. She wanted to empower people, to give them the tools they needed to make a difference in the world. She wanted to create a society where ordinary citizens could stand up to powerful forces, where justice prevailed, where everyone had a voice. That Anna's life was forever changed. But she had found a new purpose, a new sense of meaning. She had seen the darkness, but she had also seen the light. And she was determined to shine that light as brightly as she could, to inspire others, to create a better world. The librarian, once an ordinary witness, had become an extraordinary force for change. Her story, etched in the annals of courage, would continue to inspire generations to come.